Hello and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Edge. In today's program, we'll discuss the many volatilities in the real estate market, record-breaking demand, wild price increases, low inventory, and the impact of COVID, and many other topics. With us to examine these issues is our guest, William Gray, Faculty Associate, Department of Finance, Arizona State University. Bill, thank you very much for being with us.
Gary, it's my pleasure. It's been a long time.
It has indeed. We're honored to have you. You know, the last year, Bill, the housing market has had just an outstanding year. Strongest yearly growth in single-family prices, I've read. The highest number of home sales in 15 years. What's caused this incredible growth?
You know, I remember the saying long ago, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times, depending on Indeed. Who you are.
Yeah, Steinbeck.
The interest rates have been so low historically. We're seeing interest rates we saw them at 1%, 2%, 3%. And in essence, people were looking at the actual money that's free. So they were buying whatever they could get their hands on. There was a pent-up demand from the COVID we had. So interest rates were basically the prime driver. At that time, it was actually cheaper to own than to rent. I'm not sure that's completely true today, but it was true then. We also had a population shift or people moving suburbs or going to the rural areas. There's a great movement going on in population shift. Plus, people are trying to find a way to beat I guess right now we're at 6% inflation. They're trying to find a way to beat inflation, and real estate has been a marvelous asset to beat inflation.
Absolutely. Well, let me put you on the spot right from the very outset. What can we expect in the next 12 to 24 months? More of the same?
You know, if you look at the data that's published, and we have numerous articles published, you'll hear things like it's going to be the same, it's going to be worse. I don't think anyone knows the answer to this, but it's interesting. They ask, should we in essence buy a home today? What's going to happen in the next year? In the last week or two, I've been meeting with a lot of people who are looking to buy homes and ask this question, and I'm seeing a change in attitude. I'm seeing a change of let's wait and see what happens. I didn't see that a few months ago, but right now I'm seeing, as of the last few days, we're afraid. Interest rates are going up. Supply is almost nil. Let's wait and see what's going to happen. The inventory is going to be extremely low. Mm-hmm. We don't have a balance in the marketplace right now. And the problem, Gary, is people are coming in with cash and they're beating out whoever wants to buy a home as traditional buyers. Sure. I'm starting to see a pullback of average Americans say, let's wait and see what's going to happen. Not for investors. Now, you're also hearing we're going to see appreciation of 20%, 30%. Yeah, I hope
I've heard that
is not the case, because that's destructive.
That's not healthy.
If you had to pick an appreciation rate, I think you're more in line with 3 to 5%, which is a healthy market. Mm-hmm. But I'm starting to see a pullback.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, the housing supply is now at its lowest level since the 1970s. What caused this shortage?
Well, in 2006 to 2008, when we had the crisis, the builders got caught. They built spec homes hoping someone was going to buy them. No one bought them, and they really took a beating with their stockholders.
Absolutely. I remember.
So once that happens, you have to watch what you're doing with spec homes. So we didn't, in essence, get ahead of ourselves. We have people who now repaired their credit from 2008, so they're ready to now start to make things happen. As I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see a population shift. Boy, in Arizona, and you're seeing in the Salt Lake region, our population growth is off the charts.
It's phenomenal. Yes.
And they're coming here basically with cash, and they're beating out the average buyer who wants to get a loan in that area. We're starting to see different methods of real estate we haven't seen before. And we're starting to see real estate that's being actually purchased through tokenization, where instead of going and buying the real estate as one individual, they're breaking the real estate up into tokens. So you could buy a token in real estate as a part owner, and later the token can be sold.
So,
So
does token mean multiple owners?
that is correct. They create an LLC, and you see buildings in New York, you see houses in Michigan that are being sold with tokenization. So the small person that only has a few $100s that can't invest in real estate can now go buy real estate as a part owner as a token. The token could then be sold. So we're fractionalizing real estate like we've never done before, getting into what we call blockchain and those situations. Sure. This is a brand new method of how the market is now starting to bring in the average investor, the global investor. So real estate has become extremely attractive because of tokenization.
Well, that sounds like that's going to add to the shortage. Kind of carrying on with that subject for a moment, I've read that there are some 6 million home shortages in the country. Now, if that's correct, how do we dig out of that problem, given that demand seems to be accelerating?
It's going to take a number of years if we build the way we're building in the past. So we haven't changed the way we're building. In how many years, Gary? We're still building stick homes. We're still using labor. We're still using concrete. We're doing the same thing we've always done. Exactly. That won't work anymore. We have a labor problem. We have a material cost problem. We have tariff issues on lumber. We have land prices that are exponential. What we're doing is old school. So what we're seeing happening and what we're doing some programs at ASU is we're building homes using 3D printers.
Yes.
So we're doing homes to build 3D printers. It's obviously more than just a printer. And now we're seeing the labor cost greatly reduced, better for the environment. You're taking something that takes 9 months and you're cutting it down to 2 months. So we have to find a way to change our model of how we're building homes. It takes too long to get permits. It takes too long to get inspections. We're bogged down in the old method of doing things accordingly. By the same token, we see permits dramatically increasing. And eventually, we're going to have a discussion on what are we going to do with all the overbuilding we have? Because we always do the same thing.
Yes. Yep. Overbuild, it collapses.
You've seen it happen, and someone says, don't you learn from your mistakes? And the answer is we always make new ones.
Yes, a valid point. Well, kind of getting back to the question you raised a minute ago, given the current market, is this a good time for buyers? Is this a good time to jump in the market?
The Federal National Mortgage Association put out a study yesterday where they interviewed millennials. And they said, is this the time for you to buy a house? 25% said yes. 75% said no.
Really?
There's a pullback, Gary. Now, is this the time to buy a house? The question is, why are you buying? Are you buying to, in essence, move in and live there for 10 years? Then you're probably fine. Interest rates are 4%. Not bad. If you're buying as a speculator, or if you're buying to rent the house out, depending on who you are, you're probably fine. But as you're seeing, as you well know, it's Airbnb day. We're buying homes and turning them into rentals.
Yes.
If you're buying it to turn around, fix and flip, you're in a dangerous territory here.
So I guess the answer to that is just, it depends.
There's always a top of a market. There's always a top of the market. Are we closer to the top than not? I think so.
Yes. We couldn't have a conversation like this without bringing in, unfortunately, the COVID issue. But yet, regardless of how devastating that's been, that really hasn't negatively impacted the housing market, has it?
No, but it's changed the housing market. It's interesting. I was speaking to some these were people that are 25 years old who wanted to buy a house. And I said, you should purchase a home out in the area where it's cheaper to buy. And they said, no, the houses and lots are too small. We want a lot of space because if we have to do in-home schooling, if we have to have in-home offices, we need more space. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting that the larger homes are now back in favor, where a few years ago, larger homes were, what are you going to do with all this space?
Yes.
So we're seeing also the rural areas, places like Pine Top, Lakeside, Prescott, Northern Arizona, that market's going crazy. Second homes to get away from the crowd and to move out. What's also happening is people that moved out of town when COVID hit, mm-hmm. they're now coming back into town. They're now moving back in.
Truly a cyclical business, indeed.
Yeah, same ebb and flow.
Bill, what do you think will be the results ultimately of the work from home movement? We've all seen a number of surveys, and it seems like 40, 50, 60% of those people working from home currently are saying, I don't want to ever go back to the office.
And the people that own the businesses say, we want you back in the office. So the compromise is, why don't you come in for 3 to 4 days? Which is interesting because now when you work at home, you're going to have a larger space at home to work.
Indeed.
Which is going to change the real estate model. One other thing on that, Gary, which is kind of in the same area, as we get older, the older people may have to live with their kids. So we have multi-generational homes. So you're going to need more space for in-home office, in-home schooling, multi-generational homes. The office people say get back into work, but people don't want to go back in full time. This is here to stay. This is not going away. All you need is a laptop.
Very true. Very true. Kind of continuing with this trend, this cultural shift. Economically, when demand is satisfied, prices tend to fall in a normal market. Construction has been increasing in recent years, or so I've read. Do you think that new construction will eventually catch up with demand? And I'm talking about in the near term, 2, 3, 4 years. And if that happens, what are the results then?
There's something going on in construction and demand in areas that we don't talk much about, but it's climate change. What's going to happen when people have to move from one area to another? What's going to happen when you change the demographics of an area because of climate change? If it be water level, sea level, fires, whatever it may be, you're seeing a change in demographics going on there. Will certain areas have an oversupply? Yes. Certain areas of the country have less? Absolutely. We are starting to see a shift from California moving here. And you're seeing that where you live in
Indeed.
Utah.
Absolutely.
You're starting to see this a lot in Boise, Idaho.
Yes.
Where you're seeing the
Boise,
shift move
Nevada,
that direction.
Oregon.
Absolutely. Yes. The West and the Midwest is very attractive. So is there going to be an oversupply there? Probably not. But what about the East? What about Florida? What about New York? What about those areas? We simply don't know. What role will climate change have in impacting the real estate market?
Indeed. Well, if we were to summarize all these issues, is there one single biggest impediment to building and future growth?
Land costs are going through the roof.
Yes.
Land, which used to be 25% of a housing cost, that's old school now. That doesn't happen. So we have to build smaller homes, as I mentioned, 3D printed homes. They have to be 2-story. It's going to be smaller lots, and we have to go on the outskirts of town, which brings about a transportation issue. Mm-hmm. It's taking too long to get a permit. And then we have, as we mentioned earlier, the building supplies are astronomical. Those are the impediments to what we have. One other thing, homeowners insurance is astronomical now. In fact, some companies are stopped writing policies in certain areas of the country.
That's what I understand. Yes.
And if you get the insurance, it isn't a matter how much it is. It's a matter if you can get it. So you're starting to see the larger picture develop here within the climate and the economics of our marketplace. One other thing, if you can't afford housing, you can't bring in your employees. And if you can't bring in your employees, you're going to have a problem with job growth.
Indeed. How important is available water, particularly in the desert, like Phoenix? Salt Lake's in the desert, as is so much of the West.
Gary,
that's a major issue, isn't it?
Lake Mead is at its lowest level. We've already had 2 cutbacks in the Arizona area. Agricultural is the number 1 market to get hit. We don't see water rationing. We don't see the controls yet, but we have to have water to build all these homes. So as you say, we're going to grow and we're going to grow. We bring in 1 million people every 10 years in Arizona. That's a lot of water.
Indeed, it is.
So it's interesting as we have the climate change and we have the drought in the Western states, what impact will this have on the growth of different areas? It has to have an impact.
You have mentioned a couple of times technology in the sense of 3D printing. Is generally, would you say that the real estate market, the real estate practitioners are kind of behind the curve on technology, accepting technology?
Gary, what I found out in the years of business is in order to succeed, you have to look ahead 5 years from now, see what's happening, see what's going to happen in your best guess, and start making adjustments right today. You have to do that. A large portion of the market of real estate agents, that's not happening. Mm-hmm. It's not happening. For whatever reason, I'm not sure. But when you talk about things like tokenization of homes, and you talk about the blockchain type of technology, this is a global market. We no longer control information. And if you don't understand how technology is going to change the business, then your business is going to be greatly altered. So are we keeping up? Certain portions of the market are, but a large portion of the market, they are not keeping up. For whatever reason, they may have to do that. But as you well know, this is going to happen because it's already happening now.
Sure.
We don't have textbooks in school. We have all laptops.
Let's kind of turn our attention now to the commercial market. And why don't you give us just a real simple definition of what distinguish between residential and commercial?
Commercial would be industrial, office buildings, retail, and the apartment buildings, multifamily units. That's where you bring in the commercial entity, which is a different use unto itself. Mm-hmm.
Would you say then that it's any real estate that generates a cash flow?
You would hope so. Yes, that's correct. Generate the intention is to bring in a cash flow.
Yes, that's the intention. Objective. Yes. The supply chain disruptions, labor shortages, climbing oil prices have all pushed inflation to about a 40-year high, somewhere around 6-7%, as you said. What impact has this had on commercial real estate?
That's interesting because if you buy an apartment structure today, multifamily apartment building, you're buying it on rental cash flow. Mm-hmm. They're buying apartment buildings in some cases for $300,000 per door.
Really?
Not all of them, but some of them, $300,000 per door at a capitalization rate of maybe 3%. They're doing this based on the fact that rents are going to increase, which everybody thinks they are going to increase. So therefore, your cash flow is going to be based on anticipation.
Indeed.
The rental market for apartments is unbelievably hot. The only problem is, Gary, we're building all luxury apartments. So the average person that wants to rent something can rent absolutely nothing. And evictions are at an all-time high. So we have a built-in problem coming up of where are these people going to live? So the apartment area is very strong. That's the strongest we've ever seen it, along with the industrial market. The industrial market, there's not enough supply and the demand is robust.
Is there one particular segment of the commercial market that is lagging behind all the others?
It would be the office buildings of lower quality, B and C buildings. The office buildings of higher quality, the A buildings, are starting to do quite well. But what's interesting about the office buildings, the tenants are leasing larger spaces, and you would think it'd be just the opposite.
Indeed.
But the reason they're doing larger spaces is because of COVID. You have to have more space now, opposed to having what we used to call the bullpen area where everyone gets together. Mm-hmm. We now have to have more space to spread out. So they're getting larger spaces in commercial real estate and Class A buildings with all the amenities, opposed to smaller spaces, which seems just the opposite.
Interesting. Unexpected consequences. Will China's property crisis, which has been receiving a lot of headlines lately, will that bleed over into other countries, particularly the United States? And if so, what kind of impact will that have on our commercial real estate?
The impact is going to be little because the amounts that's going to affect us from all conventional wisdom isn't going to be as great as we first thought. China won't let that happen. However, their market is slowing. Their growth is slowing. The real estate market is slowing. Will that have an impact on us when China starts to slow? The answer is yes. But Evergrande, the debt they have in the United States with bonds, I believe is $20 billion. Sounds like a lot, but within the scope of the economy, it's not that much. So we don't think we're going to get hurt as much by that as much as their slow market, and they're starting to slow down.
Kind of back to technology for a moment. I've always been fascinated with 3D printing, and I know we touched on that in a minute, but I'd just like to come back to that for a second. Do you see this concept moving into commercial buildings?
Yes.
Of 5, 10, 20, 30 stories at some point in the future?
That we don't know because we haven't tested it. We've built some here for Habitat for Humanity. Mm-hmm. And you can change the design. You can add on. It's marvelous to watch this work from the actual model that you've created. How high can you go before it becomes more expensive because of the structure you'll need to support the height? I don't know the answer to that, but this is the new way of doing because we're going to use less lumber. Mm-hmm. Better for the environment, less labor, which sounds like a negative, but we don't have enough labor, less raw materials, and time will be, my gosh, it's going to cut beyond half. And time is money. So I don't think people are going to have a problem with it because you're going to go inside and you're going to decorate it any way you want. Mm-hmm. But it's a fascinating type of concept.
It is indeed.
When you bring it up and say, I'm going to live in a 3D printed home. Now, we have to change the name. That's not a very good name, but it's a phenomenal concept.
Well, we'll certainly see how that materializes in the months and years to come. But more currently, do you think Feds are going to increase rates in the next?
I don't think it's a matter if, it's a matter of how many. We're going to see the first increase in March, probably 25 basis points. As of this morning, we're seeing that there's a possibility there could be 5 rate increases. But for real estate, I'm not sure that's going to matter unless you have an adjustable rate loan or a commercial loan that's indexed. The rates have already gone up because the 10-year Treasury bill as of this morning is 1.9%, soon to go to 2%. It's the highest we've seen in a long time. And mortgages that were once 2% are now at 4%, which is going to have a tendency to slow the market. You can't have high prices and high loan rates.
Yes.
So we're already seeing the increase.
If the Fed, the market seems to be reflecting that or anticipating the increase. But if the Fed increases, let's just say 4 times, that's 1 percentage point,
Correct.
assuming they move 25
Correct.
basis points at a time. Is an increase of 1% going to have a slowing effect on the commercial market or the residential market for that matter?
Well, the 1% will not, but if the 10-year T-bill keeps going up, which is tied to the loan rates, there will be a direct relationship, because this is interesting, Gary. We're saying interest rates have gone to 4%, and we talk as if that is high. 4%. 4%.
Yes.
That's pretty low, because historically, if you could get a loan at 5 or 6 or 7%, you were doing fine. Indeed. So now we're saying 4% is high. It shows we're a little bit spoiled.
Well, we are indeed. But, if you look back over the last several years, we have been pretty accustomed to interest rates at 2, 3, 4%. And it just doesn't seem to me that the market is going to willingly accept those increased rates. Yeah. I just suspect that we're going to see a somewhat negative impact on markets and growth.
Commercial loans are normally based on some type of an index. It used to be LIBOR. And basically, you're seeing those rates have gone up. The Bank of England just raised their rates last Thursday. Yes. So we're seeing rates go up accordingly. Will that impact commercial loans, home equity loans, and credit cards, and car loans, and student loans? There's a rippling effect within the economy that'll hurt the disposable income. But the greatest effect to begin with, before that even happens, is when oil is at $92 a barrel, and you have to fill up your gas tank for $75.
Yes. Well, not only that, oil is used in the production of at least 6,000 other goods.
That's correct.
And so that has more than just a rippling effect. I mean, it can be pretty dramatic if we see oil prices push $100 a barrel again. Bill, we only have time for a couple of more questions. And let me kind of change our direction here for a minute. From an academic standpoint, are you seeing more students interested in real estate?
This is something I never thought I would see, and I don't know why. The classes we teach at ASU are full. And the young people there, I'm talking young people 20, 21, 22 years old, absolutely are hungry to learn about real estate. They want to learn how it works. They want to learn the technical. They don't want to mess around. They want to know the tax law. They want to know how to buy it. They want to know how to invest. They're for real. And it's encouraging to see these young people take these classes saying, I love to learn this because it's practical information that'll help me throughout my life. But I will tell you, they're hungry. They are really hungry to learn about the market.
Well, that's encouraging. Kind of in summary, after 2 years of change, pretty difficult change at times, not seen in many generations, the commercial real estate industry is at a turning point, or so I've read, a major turning point. I'd like to ask you again to look in your crystal ball. Where do you see commercial real estate in, let's say, 5 years?
Retail has to reform. Retail, as you know, if you see something opening today, it has to do with exercise or probably fast food. Not a restaurant, because you can't hire any help. It's either something to do with exercise or fast food. So the malls have to turn into a destination center for social entertainment. That's what malls have become, the entertainment district. And then while you're there, you'll eat and maybe you'll buy something. So retail has dramatically changed. The industrial market is outstanding because stores no longer have warehouses. Everything is done on basically point to point or time to time. So the industrial market with warehouses, with Amazon and all those other places are phenomenal. The apartment market, phenomenal. The office market depends where you are. In Scottsdale, in Scottsdale, the office market is doing just great. Other parts of the country may not be true. But here's the other thing, Gary. People are moving from the California area because rents there compared to where we are in Arizona are dramatically less. So they can move their business here, and they're saying we can bring our business here. We can make more money because we don't have all of the restrictions and the government regulations to run our business. Mm-hmm. Commercial real estate has bright spots, but you better be careful what you're buying. Someone says, should I buy this commercial retail center? You better be careful. You better be careful. The big boxes, by the way, in many places are turning into affordable housing.
Well, that was my next and final question. I've read that as many as a third of all malls may disappear in the next few years. Is that a realistic call, do you think?
I'm not sure if they're going to, they better reinvent themselves, because the day of going into a mall to buy a shirt, those days are gone. Mm-hmm. You have to go there for an experience. See, in essence, if you go into a mall today, you have to have an experience. If there's no experience, you're not going back. So any of the malls you go to that provide the great experience, they thrive. And the experience are going to be restaurants, entertainment, whatever they happen to have. But if you're just going in to buy a shirt, you won't make it. You got to do more than that. Entertainment, experience is the key.
So as the word goes, repurpose the malls into some other method of generating cash flow.
And we're already seeing that happen here. They're tearing down the old malls and they're making entertainment centers where you can go in and have housing and retail and entertainment and restaurants where the community can gather. Back to the old idea, let's go ahead and gather.
Yes. Well, we are in fact in a very interesting and changing industry. Bill, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate you spending the last half hour with us. That concludes this episode of Stringham Real Estate Edge. Today's program was brought to you by Stringham Schools, educating real estate professionals since 1989. Visit stringhamschools.com to learn more. We want to thank today's guests, and don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments section below. I'm Gary Barnes, and I'll see you on the next episode of Stringham Real Estate Edge.